Getting into that is easy. You go into the website, you type in a few numbers, and boom, you got exactly what you wanted. Or you walk into the furniture store and you walk out with a 90-day same as cash deal, only to forget to actually pay the thing off within 90 days. Or you go onto the car lot expecting to buy a nice used car only to walk away with a almost brand new model off the showroom floor with a 35, 40, 50 thousand dollar debt with a 7-year repayment plan. Or maybe, just maybe, you believe the myth that if you take out student loans to go to college, then you are certain to find a job that is going to help you pay those things back within a reasonable amount of time. Millennials, holla back if you hear me. The biggest problem with debt is that it is so much easier to get into debt than it is to get out of the debt. I mean, you can actually get into tens of thousands of dollars of debt in as little as a few minutes, while getting out of said debt can easily take years, maybe even decades. And what makes it worse is that it's really hard to tell which is the best way for you to actually get out of all of that debt. Should I use the debt snowball or some variation of it? Should I use some refinancing options? What about debt consolidation? Or maybe I should use some combination of all three. Well, don't worry, I'm happy to help you figure all of that out. All you have to do is grab a notebook and listen closely as I break down 5 major things you should consider when figuring out the best strategy for you to finally attain debt freedom. Hey dreamers, and welcome back to my channel where we break down all things money so it can stop being an obstacle and start being what it was designed to be, a tool to help you create the life that God has designed just for you. Now, if you've been following me for a while, give me a little bit of leeway while I introduce myself to the new people in town. I'm Tiana B. Cluis, an executive pastor, author, speaker, money coach, and so many other things, who's made it her mission to help Christian women trapped in the corporate life bust through the financial barriers that have her saying, hold up, wait a minute, to what it is that God has called her to do. Look, I am currently doing what I feel called to do full time. And you know what I didn't allow to get in the way? Green cotton. Although let me tell you, it put up a really good fight. And if you find yourself fighting green cotton when it comes to you trying to do what God called you to do, well, girl, sis, I'm here to help you do the thing. So come on through. If that sounds like what you need in your life, let me know by liking the video and following my channel by clicking the big red button below. Don't forget to hit the bell so that you're notified every time I drop brand new money tips and biblical strategies designed to help transform money from your biggest stumbling block into your greatest ally. Oh, and real quick, if you have been following me for a while and you know that something looks really weird right now, it's because I'm actually recording in my office. Let me be real with you. Today has been a really weird day. I cut my finger with a butcher knife. I scratched another finger, which is why I have a Band-Aid. My office keeps losing power, which is why I'm now in my husband's office, which is technically my office too. It's the office for our cybersecurity training academy and our consulting firm. So, you know, I'm technically in my office too. So everything is just really, really different right now. It has been a long and interesting and slightly chaotic day. And, you know, most of the drama started before it was even noon. So rock with me, rock with me, rock with me, as things may look a little different, feel a little different, and I may seem a little different. That's just because today is just a really weird day, but I love you so much that your girl had to make sure I showed up with this video. Okay, now let's get into it. Now, being the educational money coach that I am, I want to take a moment and clearly define each of the different strategies that we're going to be talking about. Because if you haven't been on my channel before, you might not recognize one or all of them. So first is the debt snowball. That's one of the first things we're going to talk about. Well, one of the first things that is going to be part of your consideration. Let me put it that way. Now, the debt snowball is a strategy that's all about focusing all of your financial energy on one debt at a time. So essentially what you do is you take all of your debts and you list them out by the smallest balance to the largest balance. And then you take as much money as you possibly can and throw it at the first debt, the smallest debt, while paying the minimum payments on all of the other debts. And then once you get that first debt paid off, you take the money that you were paying on the first debt and you then transfer it to the second debt. And literally as you go along, the amount of money that you're paying on each individual debt begins to grow, even though the total amount of money that you're paying on the debts doesn't necessarily have to change. And so that's why it's called the debt snowball. Now, there are some similar strategies like the debt avalanche, or really just some custom, debt payment systems that use the same methodology of focusing on one debt at a time. But my personal preference is the debt snowball because it has various, honestly, numerical and psychological benefits. So that's the one that we're going to be specifically talking about today. But I do have some videos talking about the debt snowball in detail, comparing the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. And I even have some videos talking about, when you should switch around your debt snowball and do something slightly different from the norm. And I'll make sure I have that linked at the end of the video, so you can worry about that later. Okay. Now, the second methodology we're going to talk about is debt refinancing. Now, debt refinancing is when you take one debt and you go to a new bank, a new broker, a new organization, and you ask them to basically take this old loan and pay it off with a new loan. Ideally, when you're doing this, you're trying to get a better interest rate, you're trying to get lower monthly payments, that sort of thing. The ideal situation with debt refinancing is that you do not come out of the deal with having to pay more interest in the long term. Ideally, it's going to have you pay less interest in the long term. However, there are some people who will use this methodology when they find themselves in a financial crunch and they just really need to lower their payments really quickly. Debt refinancing is a strategy that people will often use for that. Sometimes that can work against you though, because sometimes getting that lower payment doesn't necessarily mean you got a lower interest rate and that you're paying lower interest. So I do have a YouTube video about this one as well, talking about debt refinancing deals. And ideally, you just want to do the math to figure out whether or not you're going to come out better in the long run. But again, like I said, if you are in a money crunch and you need to lower your payments really quickly, debt refinancing is an option that you can take. The final methodology is debt consolidation. And now debt consolidation is when you take a big bundle of your loans and you bring them to a bank, you bring them to a broker, and you get a new loan that pays off and replaces all of those other smaller loans. So while debt refinancing focuses on only one debt, debt consolidation is the exact same concept. You're just doing it with a number of debts. You're doing it with multiple debts instead of just one. Again, I have a video about this, and it's very important with that one because it talks about the fact that, there are certain types of debt that can be very difficult to get into consolidation loans. Like sometimes it can be difficult for a person to get a student loan put into a formal debt consolidation loan, and sometimes it can be difficult but not impossible, but it can also be difficult for people to get like car loans and things that have some sort of asset attached to them, to get those sort of secured loans included in a debt consolidation loan. So those things can be a little bit more difficult, but again, it's not impossible. But I have a video talking about that as well. Actually, for debt consolidation, I think there's 2 videos, but whatever. Now that we know what the different methodologies are for dealing with your debt, what we now want to do is we want to go through those 5 different things you should consider when you're trying to figure out which option is best for you. So the first thing you should be considering is how many debts do you have? Now, if you are a person who only has like one big major debt, then, debt consolidation, for example, wouldn't work very well for you. However, if you're like the average American and you have multiple debts, then the debt consolidation might actually be a really good option for you. Now, I'm saying this with the assumption that the other factors to consider in this video don't actually disqualify you from being able to successfully use a debt consolidation loan. Because yes, there are other factors to consider. But if you are a person who has a lot of little debts, like I've had clients who had 200 with Victoria's Secret and 400 with this tire company and 1,000 here and 1,500 there, like they had a bunch of little debts just kind of scattered all over the place, then a debt consolidation loan can actually work really well for you to help you in that situation, because then you're focusing your attention ideally on just one debt. However, if you only have like one major debt or even just like 2 debts or even 3 debts, then depending on the nature of those debts, which we'll talk about more in the video, it might not be worth the hassle because it might not accomplish what you would like to accomplish. But that's the first thing you want to consider. How many debts do you actually have? The next thing you want to consider is whether or not you have high or low interest rates on your various debts. So let me be real with you. If you have a lot of debts that have very low interest rates, then something like debt consolidation or debt refinancing probably is not going to work well for you, because you run the risk of getting a higher interest rate. And so unless you find yourself in a situation where your credit score has significantly improved, your credit, just kind of payment history has significantly improved, then it's unlikely that you are going to get a lower interest rate if you already have low interest rates. Now, in a season like this, when the Fed has made interest rates lower because of coronavirus, has been easier to, get better loans. However, they have committed to the fact that in 2022, they're going to be raising interest rates at least 4 times this year. And so as interest rates begin to go up, it's going to be harder and harder for you to get a lower interest rate than what you already have if you already have low interest rates on all or most of the debts that you have. Now, if it does turn out that you have one or maybe even two debts that have a really high interest rate, then you might want to consider refinancing that one or two loans. Now, if all of your debt or the vast majority of your debt is high interest rates, then hey, debt consolidation might be a really good idea for you. It's definitely something you would want to consider, because then if everything is already high anyway, then you do have a decent chance of getting a lower interest rate, especially again, if your credit profile has improved. Speaking of has your credit score improved, that's actually the third thing you need to consider. Has your credit score improved? I've seen so many people make the mistake of trying to do debt consolidation or, debt refinancing when their credit score is actually worse. They'll say, oh, but interest rates are lower. Yes, interest rates are lower, but your credit score is higher. So you are probably going to experience a net difference of 0. It's probably not going to work to your benefit. Now, if your credit score has improved though, and when I say improved, I don't mean it improved by like a couple of points. Like, I don't mean you went from a 620 to a 630 or a 640. I mean like you went from like a 550 to a 650. You went from a 650 to a 750. Or even like the closer you get to 800, the better it gets. So, you went from like a 750 to a 800 at 810. Like, I'm talking about jumps, okay? I'm not talking about little baby steps. I'm talking about you made jumps in your credit score. Those things will be very helpful so that even if interest rates are on average slightly higher than what they were at the time that you got your original loan, the fact that you have a large jump in your credit score means you still have a much better chance of getting a lower interest rate than what you got originally. The fourth thing I want you to consider is whether or not your debts are secured or unsecured. Now, let me define those things really quickly. A secured debt is something that has an asset attached to it. So when you take out a mortgage, the asset attached to the mortgage is your house. When you take out a car note, the asset attached to the car note is the car. The same thing happens with motorcycle loans. When you get a boat loan, when you get a loan for your riding mower, yes, people do that. When you get a loan for essentially a piece of equipment where part of the term says, if you do not pay this loan, we can take back this piece of equipment, we can take back this property, we can take back this item. That is a secured debt, okay? An unsecured debt is any debt that just doesn't have an asset attached to it. So that's going to be things like your credit cards, because they're not going to take back the shoes that you bought that you swiped your credit card for if you don't pay the credit card bill. You know what I mean? So things like credit cards, things like student loans, personal loans, payday loans, things like that. So those things are typically unsecured debts. Now, you may have a secured credit card, and what people don't understand is that there's still an asset attached to that secured credit card. The asset is the money that you initially gave them. So in a secured credit card, what you'll see is that maybe you'll give them $1,000, and then you can spend on your secured credit card up to $1,000. Well, the asset attached to your credit card is the $1,000. That's why it's a secured credit card. You've already secured it with an asset of cash. You know what I mean? So there you go. There's the difference. Secured has some sort of asset to it. Unsecured does not have an asset to it. Now, when you are trying to figure out what is the best strategy for you, it can be really difficult to use debt consolidation when you have a lot of secured debt, or when the major debts that you're trying to include are the secured debts, okay? Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible. I mentioned this earlier. It is not impossible to get a secured debt included in a debt consolidation loan. It's just a lot more difficult. You specifically have to ask for a debt consolidation loan that includes secured debt. Like, they're not going to assume that you want to include things like your car in this, all right? You're going to have to specifically find a secured debt consolidation loan. You're specifically going to have to search for that. And not all banks, not all lenders, not all brokers have that as an option. So it's not impossible, it's just more difficult. And so it may actually not be worth the hassle of trying to find a consolidation loan that will include your car note when you could just consolidate everything else and then just leave the car note on the side. But that's the other thing that you want to consider. Are your debts secured or unsecured? Now, the fifth thing that I want you to consider is actually more of a statement than a question. The thing I want you to consider is that the debt snowball is always a good strategy, no matter what situation you're in. The debt snowball always works. It will always get the job done. Now, it may not always do it as quickly as you would want it to, but it will always get the job done. Because of the nature of how the debt snowball works, the fact that you are paying the minimum payment on everything and you are putting all of your money towards that smallest debt, and then you're moving it to the next debt, and then the next debt, and then the next debt, and the next debt as you're paying things off, it means that the debt snowball is just always going to work. There's no question about whether or not the debt snowball is going to work. And the beautiful thing is, it's also always a good strategy just because you can combine it with refinancing, consolidating, or both. So let's say, for example, that you are a person who has 10 different debts, and this is not completely unusual. I've seen this on multiple occasions, okay? Ignore my Band-Aid. But let's say that I have 10 different debts, and 5 of the debts are credit cards. There's a personal loan in there. There are 2 student loans in there. And there's like 2 car notes because, you and your spouse each have cars, right? So what you might decide to do is you might decide that the 5 credit cards plus the personal loan are going to be consolidated. And then you might take the student loans and you might get them consolidated separately, because getting student loans consolidated can be difficult to do in combination with other things. But you might consolidate, the credit cards with the personal loan. You can get the student loans maybe consolidated under one loan, and then you'll refinance each of the 2 cars just to get lower payments and lower interest rates, right? So now we're down to 4 debts instead of the 10 that you originally had. And then you take those 4 debts and you do a debt snowball on those 4 debts, right? So in this case, you have now combined debt consolidation, debt refinancing, and the debt snowball. And again, that means the debt snowball. No matter what, it works. You know what I mean? So that's the last thing I want you to consider, is that the debt snowball is always a good strategy. It can work by itself, and it can work in concert with one or both of the other strategies that I mentioned. So at the end of the day, you're probably going to end up with a debt snowball unless you're able to get yourself consolidated down or refinance down to just one debt. Now that I've broken those things down, I know that the average American has a lot of debt. We're just going to be honest about it. The average American has lots of debt, and that's okay. This is a safe space for that. I am not judging. Again, I'm a person who used to be absolutely terrible with debt. I used to have debt just like running all over the place, and I didn't know what to do with it. By the grace of God, we were able to, by the grace of God, because he gave us strategy and skill, we were able to get it all knocked out and handled and done, so we're in a good place. But I want to know where you are, and I want to know which strategy sounds like it's going to be the best for you. Are you thinking about debt consolidation? Are you thinking about refinancing? What about debt snowball? Or are you going to use some combination of the 3? Let me know in the comments. And matter of fact, if you have some questions about any of them, well, not only can you check out the other videos I made, you can also drop those in the comments. I will happily come back and answer each and every one of them. Speaking of answering questions, there's another way that I can do it that doesn't necessarily require you to put your business out on YouTube comments. What you can also do is you can actually schedule a one-on-one session with me, 30 minutes, absolutely free. Not a dime comes out of your pocket. The only thing that you spend is your time, hunty, okay? We can sit down and talk about where you are, where you want to go, and what's holding you back, so that then I can start to strategizing and putting things together, and together we'll come up with a plan that will actually get you from where you are to where you actually want to be. Because it doesn't matter how big your dream is, there's always a way to make it happen. Sometimes you just need someone to sit down and help you come up with a strategy to get there. And again, it's totally free. So you literally have nothing to lose. So to grab your financial breakthrough strategy session, all you have to do is go to my website at tianabclewis.com/breakthrough. Then schedule a little bit of time on my calendar, and boomtastic, we're ready to go. Meet me there, sis. We're going to get some things popping. But before you go over there to schedule this time of poppage, let me know that you like this video by liking the video and following my channel by clicking the big red button below. Don't forget to hit the bell so that you're notified every time I drop brand new money tips and biblical strategies designed to help you bust through the financial barriers that having you say, oh, no, wait, hold on, God, I can't do what you've called me to do full time. No, you can. There is a way to make it happen. And I would love, 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 love to partner with you in finding your way there. So stay connected, stay tuned in, and we're going to help you hit those dreams, sis. All right. So I'm going to get back to work because there's so much more I have to do in this office. And you have a wonderful time. See you next week. Bye bye.